fellas, it is Super Bowl Sunday,
Right.
and
Yes, it is.
we're working because we didn't get flued out, right? So, how many y'all got any people in Atlanta, friends that went down there, fellas,
man.
women?
Yeah,
went down
I
there?
went on Instagram. I was on Instagram and just going through the checklist of like, who's in Atlanta, who got flued out, and it's a ton. I laugh because I'm like, it's women that used to come to my parties in 2003 that were 10 years older than me then. I'm 38, right? So now, they 48, still on the go.
They was hitting
still
Charles
down
Oakley
there,
back in the day.
hitting Charles Oakley, and now they trying to get to Aaron Donald Super Bowl weekend. But yeah, man, it's a bunch of people down there from the city. I'm like, what are y'all doing now? At like 48, and you're down there. What are you doing? Are you doing the same thing you did at 28?
Unfortunately, so.
Yeah.
I mean, even the ones that staying here, there's a lot of Super Bowl parties happening later on this evening. I'm going to about a couple of them.
Yeah,
but
I mean, I'm having one, so I can't talk. Oh, that's terrible. I don't throw parties anymore. I just get asked to host every now and then.
I don't
There
know
you
parties.
go.
I just host a lot. It's all good. Anybody got a pick in the game? Who you think gonna win?
Honestly, I'm indifferent.
Yeah.
But if I have to choose a side, I'm choosing the Rams.
Fair.
Okay.
Fair. If LA wins, man, it's gonna be some nice Hollywood functions happening.
Exactly.
Want to go to that parade?
I had to ask the question yesterday. I was like, "Are we watching football again?" Because I felt kind of conflicted. At first, the start of the year, we're Kappa men, right? We rock with Colin Kaepernick
Yes,
for sure.
for
Say
sure.
7, support him and what he's done. And my justification was when he signed that Nike deal and he got that new bag, I was like, well, the NFL is paying a large portion of that, so I can watch football again. And I'm glad that I didn't watch last year. I'm glad I'm watching this year because the Bears were good. And I would have hurt my heart, like, had I missed this Bears season because I was boycotting. So I feel like as I buy this Nike Just Do It stuff, I am supporting Colin, and then I've ordered the jersey. I got my jersey coming from Colin's site, which I think Nike makes for him. So
Is he gonna have a commercial during the Super Bowl?
Wow.
No.
Yeah, maybe.
That's gonna make some people salty as fuck if that happens. They be sitting there watching the game, be like,
What's your prediction? Does he have a commercial during the Super Bowl? What's your prediction?
I don't know. If not, I would imagine Nike would at least do something like to disrupt.
Yeah.
Whether it be internet wise or just something. I would imagine it would make perfect sense for them to kind of cause some conversation. It's a
Yeah.
little not necessarily
I
controversial.
really haven't
but
stopped talking about them because it's one of the biggest stories in recent memory when it cuts across so many things like sports, history, politics, pop culture. Like even if you didn't know who he was before, when he started his protest, you know who he is now. Yeah.
And I mean, the Super Bowl being in Atlanta, I think, the way that that's positioned in terms of, because I'm looking on Instagram and I'm seeing T.I.'s throwing like black tie galas and like
crazy.
Ludacris is having parties and,
Diddy.
all these different people. Yeah, Diddy's showing up everywhere in white fur.
Everywhere.
Everywhere.
And take that. And it's just, it's crazy right now. And a lot of people don't realize how much of the entertainment industry, black entertainment industry, has at least a second home in Atlanta.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people down there. And so I would imagine, Colin Kaepernick shows up to your event. He's the belle of the ball. You feel me?
Absolutely.
So I wouldn't be surprised if there's something that is happening during this Super Bowl Sunday that kind of involves or brings the conversation back up at least. I would imagine so. But, Nike always takes risks, even though they're calculated risks.
Yeah.
They still, they reached out to Colin Kaepernick, but they had him on contract already.
Right.
They just never dropped him. So
You think there's still some ulterior motive with that? Like,
I don't even know if it's ulterior motives, because I tell this, like, when I'm, teaching at Northwestern, I tell kids it's all about the bread. So Nike's about the bread. That's the bottom line. There is no ulterior motive. The motive is to sell sneakers and merchandise. And if supporting this issue is going to do that, or pissing people off who don't support this issue is going to do that, so be it. And I think that's what people have to remember with Nike is they're just in the business of of making money.
I mean, that's all businesses.
Yeah,
Yeah.
And if you think about it, man, Nike's not thinking for now, right? Like Nike's not thinking of, what is the bottom line now? They're thinking like, how does this impact our bottom line 25 years from now? In 25 years from now, Colin Kaepernick, I'm saying it now, he'll win like a Presidential Medal of Freedom.
Yeah.
He will be what Muhammad Ali was to the civil rights era of the 60s 25 years from now. Colin will be that. And so Nike's like, yep, we stood. They'll 25 years from now, Nike will be like,
They'll
we
be a
stood by
campaign.
him
They'll
then.
drop that commercial. They'll
They'll
drop that commercial.
right? Like, and you'll see it now when you see Tommy Smith holding up the Black Power fist. Like, that was controversial then.
was.
He pissed off had 3/4 of America, and now it's like a prideful thing. Now they run ads about it, about his strength and courage. And I think Nike's thinking like 25 years from now, we'll be on the right side of history.
You're thinking about the legacy.
Glad you brought that up, Jeff, because think about how our heroes are viewed, like now as opposed to when they was doing it in their prime, doing their thing. Like Muhammad Ali, Martin Luther King, it's a cutesy thing now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a cutesy thing now, but back then King was probably one of the most hated people around. Like, and I think that's kind of what our Colin's trajectory is going to be. Whereas like he's taking all this heat now, but as we, as a generation, as one generation removes, and we kind of take stock on what he's doing and everything we've seen since he kneeled, he's been right, whether anybody likes it or not. Because even in my field, when people didn't really understand what he was doing, and you saw how articles were framed as a national anthem protest. It's not. It never ever has been a national anthem protest.
Much bigger than that.
It's that he happened to do it during the national anthem. Does not necessarily mean that he hates America, hates cops, hates apple pie, or anything like that. It just that's what he chose as his venue for activism.
Yeah. So the quote I heard was like, with lack of story or narrative, people create one. And so what happened with that story was that, Trump got up there and said, sons of bitches. He's protesting veterans, which he's protesting the anthem, which we know he never was doing that. And he created this story and narrative that a lot of media outlets ran with. But over time, what happens? Truth comes out. And so as the truth comes out, when you look at what he was really protesting, my prediction is like, we'll look at this 10, 15 years from now and be like, well, Colin actually was standing up for people, for justice, right? And same thing that happened with Muhammad Ali, with Malcolm X even, and Martin Luther King, where it went from hated to no, actually they were just protesting for justice and basic human rights, dignity. And, we see these shifts, man. I mean, I think it's interesting now with the forms of media, even us coming together and doing this podcast and video, like being able to create media now and tell your own story. Back in the day, people had to rely or wait on like outlets to do that. And now we can do that. So the stories change so fast.
They do.
It changed so fast.
They do. I think the other thing to think about is like Nike wanting to capitalize off in an audience, right? Because now we're in the social media era where like, I think, like imagine if like Kurt Flood was around during the Instagram era, right? When he's doing free agency and he's trying to fight for something, which now all of these athletes are benefiting mightily from. But like to galvanize an audience, you had to have a protest, you had to have a sit-in, you had to have a march. Now it's a hashtag.
Yeah.
So the level of investment, as much as sometimes when people are talking about, there's this term that I've heard people use called slacktivism, where it's like I can double tap it, I can like it, I can reshare it. Like I'm not going to show up to hashtag lunchbag, but I'll repost somebody who's there. Or like, I'm not going to necessarily stop watching the NFL, but I'll post a Kaepernick jersey or something like that. Like, so I think in this era where he has over millions of followers at this point, like he can monetize that audience without football, right? And so
doesn't need football. You really think about it.
It would somewhat be idiotic, and he's doing speeches. He just, I just saw him getting. He's up there with Henry Louis Gates at Harvard and like giving talks, and I'm like, he's getting a bag to do that stuff. He's not, he's doing okay. He's like the belle of the ball at the NAACP awards, and like he's like meeting all of the interesting part about Colin Kaepernick to me is that I would have never thought the dude who ran in the end zone was kissing his bicep would be the dude that would kneel. Like, of all the cats I thought would kneel, I did not expect that from him. Yeah. Right? And so I think at first I was a little like, is he just doing this to get attention, or is he doing this for real? I had to really give that some thought because of who he had shown himself to be before. I mean, he was like hitting Instagram thoughts just like 30 minutes ago, and now he's kneeling, right?
Like, he was big on Black Sports Online, like how they put him on there. Like a quick story with that is when he had his Know Your Rights camp here, I was only one of the 2 journalists he invited. I had those same like skeptical thoughts where I was like, is he really doing this because he's really about it, or is it like something going on? And I think with his story that people kind of like missed the most, that this dude is not only was adopted, he's biracial. Yeah. So anyone who's from those groups, there's going to be holes in their ancestry and history they're going to want to fill, and he's done that along the way, and just kind of like see like that he's really about it. To just kind of like watch that, and obviously when we're in a journalistic capacity, you're supposed to be objective, but even I caught myself like, yeah, he's about it. Like,
it has to be at this point. At this point, he stuck to his guns at a point where I remember even when Mike Vick was like, "Yo, just cut your hair, make a public apology, all this,
go back to
all
league.
of this, he was kind of saying some Uncle Thomas things, and
some Dak Prescott,
and
some Dak Prescott things.
It was definitely that Daffy Duck me with the tapping. Like, they put on Twitter anytime someone who wades into those waters, the first comment is usually someone posting that gif of Daffy Duck tap dancing. Yeah. You ever notice that?
It's interesting with Colin, man, because to the point you guys made, like, you see this brother, you see him like kissing the bicep in the end zone, and he became the face of this movement from athletes waking up, like athletes accepting that it's okay to be woke. It's amazing too when you think about like historical context, like. Although he was the one that got tagged with the face of kneeling, they never talk about like, Marshawn Lynch was sitting down through the anthem for years. He with towel over his head. Other brothers were kneeling for a while. Colin just became the one that they gravitated towards, and I think it makes me think about like Rosa Parks, like not the first to say I'm not moving. I'm not. She was the one that was strategically placed because of she was light skinned, she was attractive. So when the NAACP thought of that and they put her out, they knew that it would be the profile that would build. And I think a lot of that has to do with Colin. Good looking brother. You got the story, biracial, came out of being adopted, and now you see him and he's the face, and so they attached that to him. It's just amazing, again, back to like how stories are created and crafted.
That's real. And he had just gotten an extension, just gotten his bread. We know NFL dollars aren't guaranteed.
Right.
So it's like, wow, he really, on a certain level, I mean, I think it could be compared to, Muhammad Ali at the prime of his career, basically saying like, I'm not doing this. I don't care if money comes off the table. I don't care if I'm not able to participate in my sport. But at a point when he was like on the rise, just been in a Super Bowl, starting quarterback, extension, probably was going to leave San Francisco, get another bag. He's like, nah, I'm going to stand for this. And I'm taking this seriously. And I think like I said, my initial reaction was like, I don't know. But then over time, I'm like, no, he's being intentional about this. And saying that, like, I'm willing to give my career up for people to see what I'm trying to push. That's very admirable because, I mean, there's a lot of brothers I know who wouldn't have been willing. And when it came down time to it, they wasn't kneeling. When it was like, look, I'm in a contract year. I got some friends that play in the NFL. And they were like, we support it from afar. I support in different ways, but not on the field. It was a rough time for me, like when people were boycotting the NFL, because on some level, I'm like, these brothers are feeding their families. Right. They're supporting, in some cases, hundreds of people.
Generational wealth. You're asking these guys to give up generational wealth, and that's the thing with activism. I think that we kind of miss is. I remember like one of Common's albums, Malik Yusef, he was talking about black. He said something to the fact, I'm paraphrasing, but how black power doesn't keep the lights on. You familiar with what I'm talking about? So that's the part of activism we're gonna discuss. It's not lucrative. There's no health insurance and no 401k. Right. It's out there. It's that choice that you make, and those people who make those choices should be revered. But at the same time, I always would go on sports talk radio shows and different things, and I'll tell people about this activism. People really think this is like something like new, like they think it's a copycat thing. And it's like I always will say this: black athletes are black people.
Yes.
And they had those same stories. If they don't have them personally, they got homies,
Yeah.
cousins, mothers and fathers with, and most, I can say, to a person, every black man I know, we all have some type of story
That's
about
right.
the police being mistreated.
Oh, yeah.
Microaggressions that we're brothers in spaces where we're few and far between, and we've always seen those microaggressions. I remember, like, when I first started teaching at DePaul, I was like, I was sitting in the same seat that every professor sits in. This kid walks in. He's like, "Who's the professor here?" I'm like, "Me." Like, okay, and just walks out. I'm saying to myself, like, whatever. But at the same time, you kind of like, I'm sitting in the same seat every other professor in that department sits in.
Right.
What's different?
Well, we know.
Yeah.
we know.
I mean, I think about being in tech for all the years I was in tech. You know, I ran a tech startup for 11 years, going in rooms and people like, "Well, what do you do?" Well, oh, so you work? No, I own a company. I don't work for the company. I own it. Oh, you all built X, Y, Z? You did that app? You did that website? Absolutely. And it was, you know, I remember I was at one conference. I was the only brother there. It was a healthcare IT conference. And, you know, probably 2,000 people there, called Executive War College down in New Orleans. And it happens every year. I'm walking around. I had on a black suit, shirt and tie, had on a lanyard that said platinum sponsor. The lady walks up and is like, "So, excuse me, what time will the coffee be brought out?"
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
And
I'm pretty sure you just like,
I had to look, and I had to like use every part of like my calm, like, don't go angry black man. But I felt the souls of all of my ancestors from Sierra Leone through Georgia coming up. I felt it, like I wanted to go in, and I was like, "Ma'am, I don't know. You can ask someone that works here."
Yeah.
"Oh, I'm sorry, I thought you worked here." I said, "No, actually, I'm a speaker and a platinum sponsor. Yeah, I work for XYZ. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's okay. You know, like, but again, it's the unconscious bias and sometimes very conscious bias that exists that comes out in those circumstances. And so even in that, you talk about the risk of like activism, the risk of me saying something. Like she could have went back and said I was rude. She could have went back and whatever. In your regard, that student could have went back and was like, "Yo, there's somebody in here that's faking being a professor." Like, there's always a risk associated with it. And I don't think people recognize that, like what Colin has given up and what he's risked in his stance and in his kneeling. It's a lot.
People don't realize with athletes, particularly with football, like how how quarterbacks can get the bag. Like, we see what happened with Jay Cutler in Chicago, who had who was pretty mediocre, but at the same time, you saw the Bears have trouble filling his spot when he got hurt.
Right.
So that's something that people seem to miss. Those dudes, that's the reason why any quarterback, like, halfway decent can't get the bag. You see what happens when they're out. We saw here in the city when Cutler got hurt during the NFC Championship game, they had to bring in Caleb Haney, and that actually completely changed the game.
Man, I was reading the other day. It was like some weird, random football stuff. Like how many quarterbacks, like the Detmer brothers. There was a Detmer brother on the roster of the Philadelphia Eagles from like 2002 to like 2012 as a backup getting the bag just because of the potential that they have to be able to be a solid backup. And you think about Cutler. Cutler retired, came back, went to Miami, got another bag, which arguably should have been Colin Kaepernick's job because he's definitely a better player than Jay Cutler. And so there is the time value of money thing, man, the amount of money. And that just says, I think it's a good question. And the point of why we're doing this even is, what are you willing to risk for your values? What are you willing to give up for what you say you believe in, right? Even us doing this show, all of us got external things that we're doing, but we're here to kind of bring light to Black Chicago, to what's happening in our community, like the good things happening in our community, and talk some of the crazy too. But there's a risk associated with it that we're like, you know what, but we need voices. We need Black men in particular to lift voices to things that we typically don't lend voice to mental health, to finance, to travel, to just, everything in a different narrative and perspective from a lens of brothers that actually have done the research, done the work, have the knowledge as well. And so, I asked that question, like, what are people willing to risk for what they believe in?
I think also, like, literally just presence of Black bodies in certain spaces is helpful. Now we're in an era where there's more information than ever, but we're also not seeking more information in the same with the same diligence, because we have algorithms telling us where to go.
That's
we
right.
have smartphones that tell us what we need to be doing.
Yeah.
We have feeds that kind of give us an impression of what's popular and what we need to know. We can actually see, like, okay, there's this black guy. He's a lawyer. This is what he drives. This is how he lives. This is what he posts. This is how he, lives his everyday life. And we can also look at a school teacher. We can also look at a principal. We can also look at a tech guy. We also look at finance, whatever. And we can kind of see a more transparent view of what narratives there are that are out there. And so I think that's kind of one of the things that, this platform does for us, but also for others. Because I've had people come to Chicago, and you probably all had similar scenarios where they like, yo, this ain't nothing like what people say. It
We grew
is.
up in South Shore, and that, even within itself in the city, that's like a hidden thing. Like,
And there's cultural events that happen, or just gatherings of, I had a friend of mine come and was hanging with me and like my friends from high school, and he was like, yo, it's so crazy that like, your one friend, his parents own McDonald's franchises. Your one friend, his parents are doctors. One parent, lawyers. One this. Everybody does different things. And y'all grew up like this in the middle of the hood, and you can literally walk 3 blocks, and it is someone slanging on the corner. You know what I'm saying? All the black kids were kind of in the same South and West Side enclaves, and it's like, it's ill, but like if we don't show that there's differentiation, then I think there's a perception that like literally everybody from our neighborhoods is acting a certain way,
Right.
and is like complicit in what's going on. And I tell people, I'm like, yo, I was just as scared as anybody else, but at the end of the day, like, this is where I live. This is where I'm from. I take the same CTA. I go to the same parties that these people are going to. And in many cases, these are my cousins or friends of cousins. This is who I hoop with. This is who I play baseball with. This is who I play football with. We looked at it as like, this is just our community. Right. And there's a diversity within that I think doesn't get talked about. When I was trying to explain to somebody, if they come to the house picnic, how that was going to feel.
Yeah.
Or if they come to the block party, the Silver Room, how is that going to feel when you see 20 to 30,000 black people getting along, having fun, dancing, and just, it's very peaceful, but very professional as well, right? And so these are things that I think are untapped and not really exposed when it comes to our city, right? And so I think just our presence, not even whatever we say is whatever, but then people get to Googling and figuring out that, you're writing articles for Rolling Stone. This man won a contest for finance when he was in freaking elementary school, learning how to invest money. And, a brother who's a minority vendor owning a tech company at the age you were doing that and starting that. I think I did like the complete like stereotypical black male shit. 'Cause like, I came out and said, fuck that shit, I'm a rapper. I'm going to do the typical shit, but like, I'm not going to be the trap rapper. I'm not going to be the rapper that's projecting something that's not my reality. And so I had to find a lane. And this is pre-Kanye of saying, like, I'm a middle-class kid who comes from a 2-parent home. How am I going to talk about that?
Right.
How am I going to expose people to that? I think now people have a gist of an idea that the South Side of Chicago has a certain level of culture that we didn't know in 2003, 2004 nationally. That was a part of the whole thing with the records that we created during that time, was like, yo, we want people to know that, like, yo, you can do ratchet shit with your friends, but still go to an Ivy League school and then still, touch different parts of the masses and be intellectual and be thoughtful and, show a full range of emotions. So I think that's kind of the way that, I think we need to think going forward, is like, people are like, oh, why are you always on the internet? Why are you like, we need to show this imagery.
That's right.
Absolutely, because you don't know what you don't know. And it's interesting that you bring up that point about differentiation, because, when white people and people from other races in general see black people, a lot of times they can't differentiate between the person on the corner who's slanging versus the person who might live a couple blocks away who goes to the private school, Ivy League bound. They don't see a difference at all. And it's and even, not even just people outside the city, but even people within the city who might be from like the north side or a different part of the city. They think, oh, the south side's all bad, or the west side's all bad. Like, I was speaking with someone at an airport the other week, and I was just saying, yeah, I'm from Bronzeville, Southside Chicago. And she's like, wow, I've never been to the South Side. Like, it's and she's from here, from this area. And she's like, yeah, the media projects a certain image.
Yeah.
Let's
Right.
be real. And so that's all they know, to your point.
Yeah.
And so that feeds into that idea of not being able to differentiate. But once we finish our conversation, she's like, wow, I'm definitely going to check it out. And like, because it's like nothing like I thought.
Yeah, man. So like, it's funny you said that last week. So I work at Chicago Scholars now. So when you mentioned the 35 and under 35,
Yeah.
that's where the brothers met. And it's an organization that works with first generation and low income kids to get them into college and then into career. And so my
Wonderful
work is
organization.
working with all 3,000 of our kids. I'm helping them get jobs or helping them start companies or helping them get to grad school. And so my work is working with the corporate partners. And so to your point, like I'm having these conversations where I have to go in, put in a shirt and tie, right? Like differentiate to build and be the bridge from our kids who come from Roseland, Auburn Gresham, Inglewood, Logan Square, Pilsen, Bridgeport, all over. We got kids in 71 of the 77 neighborhoods, and I'm having these conversations about who our young people are. But what's interesting, as you said that, was we had a board retreat. And our CEO, Dominique Jordan Turner, who's a just superstar.
She's amazing.
She broke out the rooms and named each room a different neighborhood. And we had a scholar from that neighborhood sit in with the board members. So there were small groups of conversation. And we shared facts about each community. And so it was Chatham, Roseland, Hermosa Park. And then she brought food in from those neighborhoods so that the board members could experience. And it was interesting as you had these conversations because I was in the Auburn Gresham room where I'm also from, and so was the young scholar. And the lady was like, well, where is Auburn Gresham?
Right.
And I'm like, well, where do you live? And she's like, well, I'm in the South Loop. And I'm like, well, actually, Auburn Gresham is like, south of 71st to 87th Street, from the highway to almost Ashland, and like that area, just south of Inglewood and just north of Beverly, right? Like basically. And she's like, oh, I've never been there. And I'm thinking to myself, like, you don't really fully understand the city and the culture you're part of, never going there. Now, I've been to Hermosa Park. I've been to Schiller Park. I've been to that northwest corner of the city that's all like, either like Eastern European. I've been to that area. I've been to Andersonville. I've been to Wrigleyville. I've been to Southside. I've been to every aspect and part of the city to explore the culture and the parts of this city. And I think that's part of it because of the story piece of the unable to differentiate, unable and really unwilling to some degree to have to go there, like to go see that there's good restaurants in Auburn Gresham, to go sit down and eat at a spot that's in South Shore. It's interesting, and I think if more people do that, then that's why I like the what Jamal does, with like
City,
like exploring different parts of the city and getting our kids to those areas. But I think the other people that are on the other side of the aisle need to come and see the other side too. Then you break down this narrative of when you hear that there's 700 plus murders, it's everybody killing in Inglewood. It's not. Like, you talking less than 1% of people actually committing the acts of violence in the community. There are so many families, grandmas, mothers and sisters, daughters, kids, from and living in Inglewood that do the right thing every day. Yet, because of the stories that have been created and not having platforms like this to share the narrative, our city has been cast as, like you said, like when you friends from this, nothing like this. It's nothing like CNN. It's nothing like Fox News. It's nothing like that. It's completely different.
This brother's in the news.
Yeah, cause glad you actually brought that up about neighborhoods, because one of my first classes teaching at DePaul, like I was an adjunct over there for their news reporting class, and I came up with a thing called the 77 Challenge. And if some of our listeners and people watching aren't unaware, like Chicago has 77 designated like neighborhoods. So I picked the neighborhood, and I told the kid, go to that neighborhood, learn the culture of the people, learn the movers and shakers, like not only the elected officials, like the activist people, like what's neighborhood, what makes a neighborhood different as opposed to another neighborhood. And some of these kids, because it's real about the numbers in journalism, is mostly 80% white male and suburban. And my particular class only had like maybe maybe not 20 students, like 15 students. I had a couple black students, but actually basically none of the kids were from the city proper. So I was sending them to different neighborhoods. I sent a kid to Mount Greenwood. I sent a kid to to Inglewood. I sent a kid to Pullman. I sent a kid to Jefferson Park. Because like doing man on the streets interviews in Lincoln Park or in the Loop, that doesn't really help them. I mean, so I remember I had one kid, I gave him Austin, and he refused to go. I'm like, what's the problem? What's going on? He was like, I'm afraid of getting shot. And I said to him, you know who else is afraid of getting shot? People who've been shot. It was cool how me doing that, and then a week later, President Trump's Muslim ban took place. And in class, and that time in class, I was like, well, you guys see what happens when you stereotype a group within another group and laws are enacted and based off of fear, and see how that happens. Do those people deserve being that way? Because a group of Muslims or Arabs did one thing doesn't mean we should shame the whole group. See what happens when you shame the whole group? And it worked out that way, and that's why I like the fact that I did that. And a lot of these kids were like, "Oh, I never even knew." Like, wow, like they would go down to neighborhoods and they would share stories, and I was like, and I would do a thing like, all right, when you go out, you have to take a photo of where you're at down there too, and visit people, go to restaurants and stuff like that. And there was some of like for them it was like, like it was just.
It's like sitting in Sip and Savor Sip and Savor coffee shop on 43rd, black owned, 43rd, 47th, 53rd, right? And you watch people walk into the one on 43rd and they're not black. And it's like, this is nice. Oh my God. This is like, they and I'm like, yeah, like, what do you think? And I love it. I would have people meet me there on purpose. Yeah. Like a company.
So well spoken, the same idea.
Come to 43rd Street and Vincennes to this 528 East 43rd, sit down with me. And they walk in and then, you can see them like looking like, they're like, huh. I've never been here. This is so nice. Is there more places like this over here? I'm like, actually, there are. And, if we had like equitable investment of resources, there would be a whole lot more because there's a lot of people trying to open places like this in neighborhoods, in our community.
Absolutely.
So it's amazing when you say that, like, oh, I discovered a place. And then it's funny because you walk in like 6 months later and you see them in there working and they're bringing people there. And that's cool.
That's how you want to do it.
That's how it should be a goal. And I love that idea, that challenge, man. I actually tried to do that one summer. I went to all 77 neighborhoods and would find like a coffee shop or some place to work. When I was working for myself, I go work every day at a different neighborhood on purpose.
That's great.
Just to sit in there, just to see.
That's super dope.
Yeah,
that's cool.
It was fun. It was great. It was great to meet different people from all of them too.
So, I mean, I think kind of what we're saying all in all is that, like, though today is Super Bowl Sunday, it's a big time event, gatherings are happening, people are partying, and a game is going to be decided, that for the NFL championship or whatever. We still kind of want to take a step back and think about those who aren't on the field, right? And, like, kind of some of those things that are at play, racially particularly. And even though we're not boycotting, still kind of being cognizant that that's something that's prevalent and that's something that we need to kind of keep at the forefront while we're having all of this fun. That there's some backstage stuff that's happening while we're chomping on hot wings and whatnot, or whatever else you're enjoying at the party. So I think that's kind of what we're bringing into focus with this conversation, is just that athletics and kind of society in general are just a microcosm of some of the things that we deal with every day, and some of the images that are projected about us as black men, and advocating for ourselves and using our platforms wisely.
I love it. I think that's a great way to wrap this first episode.
Yeah.
And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, follow us, please, the Go Defenders. You'll be able to find us on all the social media platforms if you search that term. And, we're going to keep this thing going.
And you can find Jeff at Persona.
Yeah, you can find me at Persona at 5 p.m. if you want to come out. I promise you we'll have some chicken wings and black excellence in full display.
That's our first episode.
Yo, thanks for tuning in, you all.
Yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Peace.